Hey folks, Nate here with Holiday Traditions Light Show in southern Utah, and I am going to put together this video, and this is going to help people set up their P5 panels using a color light card. I've been asked by hundreds of people over the last several months that get stuck in some spots how to do this, and so I thought this would be very intuitive, very educational for those who have never done it before, and for those who have and may have forgotten how to do it. So just going to walk through a couple of things. First of all, what you're going to need, obviously you're going to need some panels, ribbon cables, power supplies, plugs. And then the hardware you're also going to need, I'm using a color light card. This is the 75B, so it's the 8-port. There is a 16-port. I'm also using a Raspberry Pi. This is the Pi 4 Model B, and it's the 2 gig RAM version. A network dongle, so you got Ethernet on one side, USB on the other, and this is Ethernet, USB to gigabit Ethernet. Also some dikes, screwdriver, and 2 patch cables for your Ethernet. I'll also be using the LED Vision 5.0. It's the one I use the most. It's because I know where everything is on it, and super easy. I'll be demonstrating a 2x2 panel today. And when I'm all done, I will be putting the links into this in the file sections for the cards, or for the panels for your card, so you can just upload those based on the vendor where you get your panels from. I'll be doing them from Paul Zhang, RGB Man, Wired Watts, Daniel, and Ray Wu. So we should have everything up and going within the time I post this video or shortly thereafter. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and wire everything up off camera. We'll come back once we get the hardware put together, and we can walk it through, and I'll show you where we're at. Thanks. Okay, so I went ahead and I've wired everything up. At this point, I haven't put the Raspberry Pi together. I have went in and I've put the latest version of FPP on there. I'm running 4.1 OS, and I've also set that to a static IP. So when we get to the Pi part of this, we won't have to do any of that. All we have to do is go in, set it up, get the panels working. So I've wired all the panels together. I've got my ribbon cables hooked to the color light card. I haven't put my network cable in there yet. I've got them daisy chained, and I've got my powers all back to this 300 watt power supply from Wired Watts. And all panels are 5 volt, so you never want to use 12 volt. And I don't recommend using a 12 volt and buck converting them, because that's just a lot more work. It's easier just to run a 5 volt power supply. Now, because I'm only running 4 panels, 1 power supply is plenty for this setup. And so I'm going to go ahead and get a few more things set up. I'll come right back. All right, as you can see, so I've gone ahead, I've mounted my panels together. I just had these 3D printed brackets, and they were made for a P10. So the screws don't quite line up, so I have a little bit of spacing in between my panels. But that's not going to affect how this works today. I've got my color light card wired in, and I've got it networked straight back to my PC. Now my PC is hardwired. There's no, excuse me, this is my little Surface Pro. I don't have any switches, any routers, or anything in between the color light card and the computer. everything is just straight through. And so we'll be able to detect that card once we power it up, and will get us a good signal. So while that's powering up, I'll also make note that the panels on the arrows do face up. For this, they do not face sideways or down. Running a color light card, they will need to be in a horizontal position, not a vertical position. So with that fired up, we can switch on over to the software and we'll get started on that. Okay, now with the laptop booted up, or your computer, whatever you're using, you're going to open up the LED vision. And it's going to pop you up to this main menu. First thing I like to do is go into the controls, and I look for the brightness adjustment, and I change this to about 30%. Now that's already down because all of my other color light cards that I set up are that way. So I'm going to just close that out. Then we're going to go into the screen controls. This is where we're going to detect our network card or the color light card. We're going to have this selected as net card from computer, and then you're just going to hit detect. Well, let's use that. So it's connected to our net gig card, and we have it selected. Now, because I have a 2x2 setup, whoops, we're going to come down here and we're going to change this to 128 is the width, because that's 64 times 2, and 32 by 2 is 64. Then we'll hit apply. Now if you look up here in the little window right there, that brings up this, it changes the size of this display when you do that, okay? So that is going to be, when your color light card is set up correctly, you'll see exactly what's on that screen on your color light cards. So from here we're going to go into the settings. Your password is 168. Then we're going to detect receiver cards. We're going to use the Realtek USB gigabyte card right there. Then we're going to go into the screen parameters. Screen parameters show we want to be 128 by 96. Excuse me, we want to be 190. So because it's 96, we want to change that to what we were before, and we want that to be 64. Okay, once that's done, you're going to save it, and this is going to save a file to your computer. You can name that whatever you want, put it wherever you want. Then it's going to be an RCVBP file, and you can change that to whatever the size of your panel matrix is. You can change it, you can just call it P5, whatever you want to do. And you're just going to hit save. I'm not going to save that because I don't need to. And then you're going to send that to the card. Now what this does is this saves it right to your color light card. If you don't do this, once you disconnect it and connect it back up, then it will erase all your settings. Okay, so this right here is this box setting. This will be your module size. Okay, so that'll be the size of your entire matrix. Now if you're running more than one color light card, that will be smaller, and then it'll just be whatever that shows. And this setting, you're going to come over here and you're going to click on this box. This is the step that most people forget. Click on that box, because this is how many color light cards. This isn't how many panels you have. This is just the size of your cabinet, okay? So you're going to change that to 128 by high by 64. And then we're going to save that. Once again, it's going to ask you to save it, and we're going to say no. because I don't need to. And then you're going to save it to the receiver. Okay. Now there are, oh look, see, we're done. It successfully did it. So now we're done. So now it shows that we have 128 by 164, which is our height. Now you have these advanced settings that you can go in and you can change a bunch of stuff. But it basically changes these performance settings. Now if you don't have these performance settings from your manufacturer, you can get those, or I'm going to actually build those and have them put together and put in a file section for anybody to grab. And these will do up to 8 wide by 8 tall in the settings. So there's also these IntelliSettings settings. If you want to go through and try and do it yourself, you can do that. The other thing is you can also load. You can click load here and you can browse anything on your computer. You can download something from the internet, or you can come in here and you can select these preset settings. Sometimes you can get these to work, sometimes they don't. Most of the time I've ever seen them work is just when you're working with P10s and not P5s. So we're going to skip that for now, and we're going to know that that works. So now I'm going to come over here. Now look at my LED there. We're going to come over here to the panels now, and you can see that is just, that's identical to what it reads on the screen. And that's how simple it is to set up an LED panel. I mean, this is taking me about, takes me about 3 minutes to do, you know, to do one. Once you've done enough of them, you'll get really good at it. But also one thing I want to point out too is right here, if you don't have these performance settings on for your panels, you can, if you download them from the file section, this is where you'll load them. You'll browse and you'll go to your download, wherever you downloaded it, and you'll input it right here, and then that will give you the height and width. So right now I can go up to 512 wide, which is 8 panels, by 256 tall, which is 8 panels with this setting. So now that we've got that done, we've saved everything to the parameters, or to the screen parameters. We've saved the receiver mapping. Now it's time to set up the Pi and make sure everything tests good. There are some tests that you can run here inside the LED Vision to make sure everything works good, and I can walk you through that just really quick if you'd like. So here's the panel. So you can just go into this. There's a test section where you can go in to screen test, and then it can ask you if you're red. Yes, we're red. We're green, and it tells you green and 255, which is the brightness, and you can turn that clear down if you want to. Blue, and obviously white. Then there's some other things. You can do aging, you can do grids, so you can just see how the panels work. Okay, with that, let's move on to setting up the Pi, and we'll test it all out and make sure it works. Well, one thing I failed to mention before we move on is this box setting. This is the size where you put in the width and height of your entire panel. So if you're running 8 by 8, you're going to be 512 by 256. That was probably pretty given. I didn't have to explain that, but I just thought I'd mention that. So if you were 3 wide, you'd be 196, and 3 tall you'd be, 192, and then you'd be 96 high if you were doing a 3 by 3 in that box setting. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I've got my Raspberry Pi booted up and it is ready to go. So let's get into the FPP software and set it up. Okay, so for this test we're going to want it in standalone mode. We're not going to want it in bridge or master. So we're going to go over here to the input output settings. We're going to go to channel outputs, and you're going to go to your LED panels. So here we're going to, first thing we're going to enable the output. Okay, so we're going to change our width and our height. We're 2 by 2. And we're running a 64 by 32 8th scan panel. Top left is our starting point. You can decide how you like your gamma, but I like it at 1.8. That seems to look the best for me. And then our start channel is just going to be 1 because we're not doing anything else with this. This is the only thing that's going to be in here. Okay, then our interface is going to be ETH1 because our network is coming into the Pi on ETH0 and going out on ETH1. And that may change depending on a bug in the software, but if you can't get it to work, that's most likely where your issue is going to be. So we're going to save those settings, and then we're going to restart the Pi. Now we could have done all of these things in one step, but I generally like to just restart it and save as I go. So now that that top part's saved, we go down to our panel layout. So our first panel is going to be on the top row. Now remember I said our arrows were pointing up. Well, that's fine, but in our software we want them pointing down because FPP sees the color light card upside down for some reason, and if you have those pointing up, then all your stuff is going to be upside down. Now our panel order is going to be 1 on the top, and we're going to be panel 2 on the bottom. And then we're going left to right, so we're doing the front view, so we're going to be going reverse, and we're going to right to left. So panel 1 is on the right, panel 2 is on the left. Panel 1 is on the right, panel 2 is on the left. Now I screwed up and I changed the panels there instead of the output. Now that would have thrown us off if we would have saved that and tried to run it. So now we got that done. Everything looks good. 1 1 2 2, and then we got panel 1, panel 2. Now we're going to just leave these on default. The only reason why you would mess with these is if you had a panel that you switched out and it didn't match this color order over here. Okay? So we're going to save that, restart FPPD, and then we're going to go to our status control, display testing. First thing I like to do is check my color order. So I like to come down right here to the bottom and I click fill. I bring these all down so I can tell that my color order is already out because I'm watching the panels as I'm doing this. So I'm going to turn those all the way down. So if I bring that up, so that's blue, so our first color is going to be blue, not red. Our second color is green, so we're going to be, and then our last color is red. So now that we've got that tested, we're going to be B, what do we say, blue, green, red. So now we're going to go back up to our input output settings, channel outputs, and we're going to change this right here to BRG. I'm going to save that and restart. Once that's set, then we'll go back to our display testings again. We'll check it and make sure we got the correct color order. Once again, go down to the fill, turn these down. Fat fingers don't work too well, so we'll just do it like this. So our first color should be red, and we're not, we're green. So we didn't quite get it right. So I'm going to mess around with this really quick, and then well come back to it. Okay, Matt, well, it looks like we had it right the first time. I just clicked the wrong button in there, so we do have the color order correct. So now I'll just pan this over a little bit. So when I turn up the red, you see red on the panel, obviously. That's good. Green. That looks good. And while you're doing this, you can just check to make sure all of your pixels work as well. And blue. So those are golden. That thing is set up and ready to run. Now the only thing you need to do from here is just set it up in X-Lights. And I'm not going to go through that in this video. I'm just making sure that we're testing good with the Pi and the colorlight card. So we'll put together another video running it together. But I hope that gives you guys a good overview of how the colorlight card is set up, how the software works, how it works in conjunction with FPP using a Raspberry Pi. Guys, if you once again, this was meant to be informative, to take a little bit of load off my back, since I get a lot of people asking me questions how to do this. If you have watched this, you get through the end and you still have some questions, feel free to reach out to me on Messenger. I'm usually pretty good at getting back to people. And if I don't have an answer for your question, we can usually find it out within a few days. So once again, guys, thanks. I hope this helps you out a lot, and I hope you guys' displays are just as good as they can be this year. So thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next video.